Welcome to the July 9th edition of the PFF Forecast. We have a great show. We are finally starting our division previews with the AFC East. We also have a recap of an incredible golf match that went down this weekend between members of this very podcast. It's going to be great. We've got some new season-long markets that have opened up with passing, receiving, and rushing touchdowns. We'll talk about some of our favorites there as well. It's going to be a great show. Let's rock. The much awaited, the match that we were all awaiting between you two fine gentlemen, both of you located in New York. You came together, you held this is a weekend where there wasn't much to watch, right? Unless you were really interested in watching Victor Wembanyama get dunked on by Britney Spears, as well as the Charlotte Bobcat Hornets this weekend. But all of social media pretended that it was an impressive performance. Just really wonderful stuff. Other than that, there wasn't much to watch, but you guys found a way to give us something exciting in the sporting world. So I want to recap, want to know how it went, who won, and most importantly, what kinds of bets you guys placed on the course today.
I'll let you take it away, Judah.
Well, I think the initial bet was whether or not we'd actually get this game in. The weather really was questionable. I saw when I woke up 70% chance of thunderstorms right at our tea time, heading throughout the afternoon. But it poured when I drove to the course and poured when I left in a little bit on 17, but I think we made it out in the clear. And that was the most important thing. And I'll be honest, I was a little skeptical, but I just kind of powered through.
We somehow really towed the line there on both sides. It was great. Yeah. So look, we now that we have a better feeling, maybe we can play the next time, get some strokes going, get some more bets going on. I'll say this: Judah is the best 3-iron striker in the tri-state area. Wow. It is 215, 225 dead straight almost every time he hits it. I think you should play the 3-iron just from all distances, just like chip shots, like flop shot, like just work the 3-iron in any way possible. Yeah, we didn't get any money down. We just had a nice round with the fellas, dodging the rain. But I did play some pretty good golf, so I think it's probably a good thing that we didn't have any skin in the situation.
Yeah, I mean,
What kind of a 3-iron are you playing here? I mean, this is exciting. I'm gonna go buy one now.
It's not a hybrid. It's just a regular, 3. I don't know who makes it. None of these are my clubs. I've been on borrowed clubs. I found this one early. This is I've been playing golf for 6 weeks now. Granted, very, very often. But this is my club.
It takes people that have played golf 6 years to hit a 3-iron, and most still can't. I don't know if I've ever owned a 3-iron. I think a lot of people go up to a 4 and then say, screw it, I can barely hit that. I remember I bought my set of clubs. I went up to a 4. I added a 2-iron. I realized I couldn't hit that for shit. So I got rid of it. So to play golf for 6 weeks and hit your 3-iron well, I think bodes well for your future as a golfer. I'm not going to lie.
I couldn't agree more. I told him the whole day. He's got the makings of a young tour pro. I got a lot of faith. I'm buying futures. I'm long on Judah Fortgang, just like he's long off the tee with his 3-iron.
That is some high praise.
What you guys drink on the course? This is a very, so no bets were placed. I get it. Get started in a friendly fashion. I don't support it, but I get it. What did we get any drinks going on the course?
You're really going to be embarrassed by us now. See, we didn't bet. We also didn't drink, which I'll be honest, I think it's the first round of golf I've played without drinking in maybe, I don't know, my life. But yeah, we're just battling the elements and just trying to go low. It was weird though. It was weird.
A Sunday morning tea time also, comes with a weekend before it.
Right. I did tell Judah I was battling a crippling hangover, which he saw because I had an 8 on the second hole. So he witnessed the hangover really live in the flesh. But we settled down after that.
Okay. Maybe it'll take me getting out there with you guys to get the important parts of the match going. Because I'll just tell you, here's the way that I prepare for a round of golf these days. I hit 0 balls at the range. I spend my time putting together 2 large shaker bottles worth of margaritas, spicy margaritas. The shaker bottle, people think that it was invented for people to make protein shakes after a workout. It was invented for golfers to be able to enjoy a good cocktail throughout the entirety of the golf experience. You can put them on ice. It's fantastic. And then the other key is you need to have some kind of concept of how you're going to bet that kind of refreshes each hole. Because at my level of play, and you guys might be better than me, but if it's a whole like 18 hole thing, it can go south real fast. I need something that regenerates every hole, right? Kind of gives a fresh feel of things. So we'll get that going at some point. I honestly have played like 3 rounds of golf in the past like 5 years, so I should be easy money at this point. But we'll see if we can make that happen. I have one more question for you guys. How packed was the course? Because I've heard some horror stories of what it's like to try and play in New York during the summer. What was that like?
So this course in particular, you are going to sometimes play like a 6-hour round. Like that is a very real possibility. It pretty much just takes up your entire day. I think because of the rain, it scared off a lot of those casuals, the people that weren't willing to just bear through it. We played probably 4 hours, 15 minutes,
Yeah.
4.5 hours. We were cruising because yes, that is real. That is very real.
Yeah, I've seen some gnarly videos. All right, we will get a match going at some point with all 3 of us, and there will be money placed. So we will talk about the bets that have gone down. By the way, one of my favorite memories growing up as a kid was going to the golf course and playing for like $5-10 against other juniors that were out there, and we would just play like 18 hole matches with a wedge on the practice green. Winner got to choose the hole. You had to putt with your wedge. It's just like some of the best memories. That was the only way I got good at chipping, and my short game now sucks. Maybe I should go do that a little bit more. All right, let's talk some football here. For members of the printing press that are new, welcome to the podcast. Hopefully you have joined our printing press Discord. The podcast Discord is completely free. Over 1,000 people that are members of the Discord. We started at the end of last year. Really looking forward to a full season of it with this group. It's a great way to get involved. Certainly during the off season, people are betting on things all over the place. So if you're looking for some good insight, whether it be WNBA or golf or Formula One, my guy Lando finally came through. There's some Lando fans in the Discord. Go check it out. The link is in the description on the YouTube. And also we tweeted out with the podcast link. So go check it out there. All right. Before we get to the AFC East, which we are going to preview, there are some new markets. We're always scouring for new markets. It is kind of the doldrums of the offseason, but there's some new markets. Judah, you found them for us. Why don't you talk us through what you found and some of the angles that you like, and we can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So it's just different touchdown markets. You got most passing touchdowns. I've got my eye on a couple over-unders, which we'll talk about, and the same thing for rushing and receiving. I think this is my favorite one. Honestly, this might be my favorite future of the offseason, if not maybe for the Amon-Ra St. Brown 950, which is Bryce Young under 22.5 touchdowns. This can be found on DraftKings. I'll say 2 things. Number one, it's just a general note. You can see some like pretty disparate lines. Like it's 22.5 on DraftKings, it's 20.5 on FanDuel. I'm not trying to middle that, but it just kind of suggests that there is some real discrepancy and inefficiency. Like this is not a perfect market here. The reason I love this play is just like looking at kind of the base rate of touchdowns thrown in the last 2 years. Even in 2022, we had 12 quarterbacks throw for 23 or more touchdowns. The year before that, it was 13. There's no way that Bryce Young, I shouldn't say there's no way. I find it very unlikely that Bryce Young is going to finish in the, top 40% of touchdown passers next year. This is a dreadful Panthers receiving core. I'm not even sure Bryce Young's going to be playing week 1. Like, it's possible, but like you got to build in some possibility that like Andy Dalton's going to get the first 4 games. Unless it's a real tail scenario, I don't see how Bryce Young gets over 22.5. That's a big number. And I think the market's just like way adjusted up. His prop should probably be like 19.5.
I was going to say, you compare, one of the things I like to do with these markets is compare them. Yeah, I think you make a good statement around like looking at the dynamics of the league that helps you put these into context. I think people really struggle with that and they just like blindly bet overs on players they like. Generally what you see in the market. Like, let's take a look at a guy who was the first quarterback drafted last year, who has a much better supporting cast, certainly at the receiver position, Kenny Pickett. His regular season passing touchdown total is 18.5. Like, I sometimes like to think about it like, which player would I take to have more passing touchdowns? Like, I think I would take Kenny Pickett in this situation. And I think that's because I have confidence Kenny Pickett's going to play the whole season, and I much prefer his supporting cast. And, I think with Bryce Young, you make a great point around that 22.5 number being way too high. Another good comparison point, I think, is Jalen Hurts. His total on touchdowns is 22.5 as well. Which I think, obviously there's the rushing component, but just think about that offense, the number of opportunities and the receivers that he will be throwing to. That's just kind of bananas to me. So I love that one, Judah. Brad, what are you thinking? Have you got any here that you particularly like?
Yeah, no, we love that one. Judah, did you mention the stat about like how many quarterbacks even throw for 23 or more touchdowns in a season?
Yeah, it's like we got 12 out of 37 or whatever, and 13 out of 37. Like, that's a really low number.
Yeah, like it's a third of the NFL does it, and a rookie who might not even start right away is on that number. So yeah, that's a great one. I mean, the only one that I already bet, and it's way too late now, but it was just we did the same thing with the yards when they came out. That's moved down 300 something yards when those drop. So I guess my contribution is just keep an eye on next year when they drop a lot of these rookie props, because the prices they put out are crazy.
Yeah. All right. They're also rushing, receiving, over-unders, and most touchdowns. Any that you like there, Judah?
Yeah, I'm going to take Jahan Dotson over 4.5 touchdowns. This is at plus money. This is a guy who was an elite separator in the red zone. He actually had 5 red zone touchdowns and was 3rd in the NFL in our separation metric in the red zone, which I think is kind of a separate skill. A lot of it's also in zone coverage, which suggests kind of a finesse and an ability to get open. And I also love this play because Dotson's going to be able to score on some deep bombs. He's a guy who they'll be targeting with 50-yard passes. I'm sure 1 or 2 of those will result in touchdowns. And he also, can win after the catch and maybe break, a 50 yards after the catch type touchdown. If you can win in all 3 of those ways, 4.5 touchdowns or 5 touchdowns, not that many at plus money. I really like it.
Yeah, I think he's one of the more underrated. We talked about this a couple podcasts ago, and you should go listen to it if you didn't. Most underrated receivers in the NFL. I think Dotson is a guy that, people don't even know who Terry McLaurin is, so they certainly don't know who Jahan Dotson is. But he played really well last year, and there was a portion of the season where he was, I think, getting a higher target share, and maybe considerably so, over McLaurin. Now, part of that was the quarterback play, but I think you make a really, really good point there. Brad, any others on the receiving side that you like?
Yeah, there's one I love here. It is Devontae Adams over 8.5 touchdowns is plus 110. Now, I've been pretty clear I'm not a huge fan of the Raiders offseason. Garoppolo and Carr, I think is kind of a wash, but I mean, it's just about opportunity in this division where they're going to be battling in every single game they're in, going to be throwing probably all 4 quarters. And you look at his last 7 seasons, he's gone over this 6 out of the last 7 years. So you're getting a plus price on 8.5 for him. He had 14 in his first season with Las Vegas last year. And you trade away Darren Waller. So another big body target in the red zone is no longer there. I like that price a lot.
That's solid. The one that I like is the tight end, our guy, Dallas Goedert. Just 3.5. Just 3.5 for a guy that was dominant in the postseason. Was a frequent member of the Lock of the Week and bets that we placed. I think we've talked about his total on receiving yards as well. I can't remember. I know I have a couple of bets on him this offseason, and that's one of them. But looking at his performance in the postseason, I think he continues to be a larger part of that offense. And here's the thing. you gotta leave someone open there. They're going to be very hard pressed. Opponents are to stop Devontae Smith and AJ Brown. And I think that leaves a really good opportunity for Dallas Goedert, a guy that rated in the top 3 in tight ends last year. He is not just a guy that's benefiting from the offense being strong. He's legitimately a very good player. I think that shows out for the Eagles. I know we talk about sparingly about running backs on this podcast, but any running backs, any rushing touchdown props that you like, Judah?
Yeah, we're going to go with Travis Etienne at over 6.5 touchdowns at plus 140. Again, talk about market inefficiency and pricing. You can get an under 6.5 minus 120 on a different sportsbook if you want to arbitrage that. If that's your thing, that is available. I like the over 6.5 at plus 140. He had 5 touchdowns last year, but I think we also forget that like Travis Etienne was like split and work with James Robinson for the beginning of last season. The Jaguars, they drafted someone in the 3rd round. I don't expect them to give a rookie a heavy workload. Etienne at points last year was getting like a 90% share. He should be attached to one of the best offenses in the NFL, I think, with the emergence of Trevor Lawrence. 6.5 at plus 140 is just a very attractive price for a clear running back number 1 on a good team.
Yeah, that's a great price.
Yeah.
I mean, go ahead, George.
No, I was going to say I agree with you in terms of just hitching your wagon to a guy that gets a lot of the share there. And remember, teams are incentivized to make their first round picks look good. So that's a guy. Now we'll be talking about him being underpaid in just a couple of years. But while he's young, I expect him to pump the ball his way. Brad, what were you going to say?
I just think it's interesting that his price, you look at other running backs, Alex Madison has a worse price than that. James Conner has a worse price than that. Like, I guess they're afraid of Tank Bigsby, maybe vulturing some of those goal line carries. But, I mean, that's a very, very good price there. So I have one that I like. It's way down at the bottom of the board. He's known as more of a pass catcher, but James Cook over 3.5 touchdowns is plus 105. I mean, to this point, they haven't brought in competition. And obviously, Josh Allen factors in a ton here. He gets a lot of those goal line carries. But if he's going to be the number 1 back on this team with, Zach Moss and whoever that, or it's not Nyheim Hines, the guys they have there, I'm not really afraid of those guys taking away those good touches. It's really just Josh Allen. And the Bills have discussed at length how they're trying to not run Josh Allen as much. So it's really, it's honestly, I think it's a bet on him keeping the job. And if he does, he should score 4 touchdowns on the ground.
At least. Yeah, well, I believe that keeping the ball out of Josh Allen's hands when I see it.
Yeah, I know.
All right, we're going to get to the AFC East here. Before we do, a little reminder. It's Sunday. You're sitting back, relaxing, enjoying your family around you. You want to make sure that you support them and keep them in a place of safety and well-being. If you have kids, none of us do, but at some point that may be the case. You'll want to make sure that your children and your family is truly your top priority. And how do you do that? Well, one of the ways to do that is by purchasing term life insurance to make sure that your family is protected and safe for the future. Now, if you're like me, you hear the term life insurance and you go, F no, I don't want to deal with that. I have no idea where to start with that. And that is why Fabric by Gerber Life is here to help. In just 10 minutes, downloading an app, you can go online and figure out what it means, what you can afford, and what affordable term life insurance looks like. In just 10 minutes, you don't have to call someone up on the phone or deal with some, fine print baloney. So all you have to do is go to MEET Fabric, fabric.com/forecast and apply in just 10 minutes and find all of your options to protect your family for the future. That's MEET Fabric, fabric.com/forecast. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company, not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health concerns. All right. Subject to health concerns, a couple of people that are playing in the AFC East, most notably Tua Tagovailoa. But let's start with this. We're going to preview the AFC East. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do this from a betting angle. Everyone obviously is out there doing their division previews. We're going to make sure that we approach it from a betting first perspective on this here podcast. So let's start with the division odds, guys, and talk about that a little bit. I'm looking here just at DraftKings. Obviously, there are other sports books out there, so things may differ ever so slightly. Buffalo Bills are plus 120, the Jets plus 270, The Dolphins, as of this taping, are 3-1, and the New England Patriots are 8-1. So for people that are curious, what does that mean? The Bills with a 45% implied probability, the Jets with a 27% implied probability of winning the division, the Dolphins at 25%, and the Fighting Bill Belichick's at 11%. For those counting at home, that adds up to 108%. So let me start with you, Brad. As you look at the division odds and you think about this division, what makes sense to you? What doesn't make sense to you? And how do you kind of think about this division playing out?
Yeah, I think we talked about it a good bit on the show already. This is obviously one of the better, if not maybe the best divisions in football. But I think every team is susceptible to a pretty wide range of outcomes. And the Bills, one of the better rosters. They were my number one rated roster just from a money standpoint by valuing up the players in the team. But, if Von Miller isn't Von Miller, can they generate a pass rush? Is the offensive line good enough? Are the receiving options outside of Stephon Diggs good enough? Then the Jets, obviously, new quarterback, all these new pieces. Can they make it work? Obviously, Miami, it's Tua. So I don't know. For me, I think it's playing the uncertainty here and just kind of maybe a tail outcome for any of these teams wouldn't really shock us. I think that's the big thing. They're all good, but they're all super susceptible to a key injury or something like that, just kind of derailing their season a little bit.
What do you think, Joe?
Yeah, I think that's mostly right. I think there's also kind of, I'll say it in a different angle, a lot of like priced uncertainty of what these teams are, which is like we've kind of become accustomed to the Bills of the last couple of years as being this dominant team. I think the first half, they were the best team in the NFL. The second half kind of left a sour taste. Is it clear which of those is kind of closer to the 2023 outcome? Not exactly sure. Obviously, like Tua and the Dolphins, it's a major mystery. Or it's like, was their success, a McDaniel feature? Will defenses kind of adjust? Does it depend on the health of Tua? All of those things. And like, I think people kind of forget with the Patriots that like Matt Patricia was calling plays for them last year. Like this offense should look very different. And then obviously the Jets getting a massive upgrade with a great defense. How will that kind of fare? Will the defense regress to an extent that Rodgers can kind of make up for? Will they play at the same elite rate? These are a lot of kind of uncertain questions. And I'm with Brad wanting to take tail angles.
Yeah. So which one of these prices is the most off, in your opinion? Because I think you can make, as you guys just did, like there are question marks for all the teams. There are some things that you can lean on for all the teams. Obviously, with the Jets and the Bills, you look at the quarterback and wide receiver position. For the Dolphins, like the wide receiver and head coach position. And for the Patriots, I mean, you make a good point there, right? You go from just a guy that probably has no place calling offensive plays in Pop Warner, much less at the NFL level. So, okay, you have all those things, you kind of weigh them up. You look at the prices right now. Which one is the most off in your opinion, Brad?
They've all kind of moved. They've sharpened a good bit, but honestly, I would still just say the Bills being a decent favorite there. I think them, Miami and New York should be a little bit closer together.
Yeah.
What do you think, Jim?
I think it's the Jets by a pretty wide margin, actually. I think they have just as much upside as the Bills, if not more. If the defense can kind of be 90% of what they were last year. And I think there's also, right, we like to think defenses regress. The Jets are really, really deep, which I think kind of helps their case, which is that like if they lose an edge player or two, they're so deep at that position, it's not going to kind of make as much of an impact as it would a different team who loses, say, Von Miller, and kind of the entire pass rush collapses. So in that way, there are like fewer weak links. And like on offense, if Aaron Rodgers is, I mean, I think he was still pretty good last year. If he kind of is anything like 2020, 2021 Aaron Rodgers, like this has got to be the best team in the AFC probably. And in that way, like there aren't so many things that have to go right for the Jets to be good. And they're still kind of priced as a decent long shot.
That's my answer too. I think so just comparing the two teams, let's compare the Bills and the Jets. I think it comes down to what your opinion is of Aaron Rodgers. If your opinion is that he played poorly last year, and he did, just a 78 PFF grade, his worst grade in the last 3 years, obviously was coming off of back-to-back MVP seasons. But if you look at that and you say, okay, the regression is continuing, he is washed up, then I think this makes more sense. But if you look at kind of the 3-year aggregate between the two quarterbacks, and Josh Allen's graded over 90 PFF grade each of the last 3 seasons, he's been phenomenal. You can, I think, make a pretty strong case that looking at Aaron Rodgers, watching him, it wasn't as if his arm strength went away. He plays through injury all the time. It seemed like he was pretty injured. And by the way, was throwing to, not the greatest receiving core. So if you can accept that they're probably a lot closer, maybe even the fact that Aaron Rodgers could outplay Josh Allen in a given day, I think it makes sense for the Jets and the Bills to have a much closer price. The thing with the Bills that worries me is there's some bad signals that I think are coming out from the Bills a little bit. The Stephon Diggs thing. I don't know how you view this, Brad and Judah, but like if something comes out in the public, it usually is way worse than it actually is internally. And Stephon Diggs is a guy who is a phenomenal player, maybe one of the best route runners in the NFL, best receivers in the NFL. But he has been not the easiest to deal with in the past. When things are going well, seems to be good. But if something goes wrong there, it feels like they're a little more fragile. I think the Dolphins, there's a lot of fragility there, obviously. You could make a case that actually the Jets have the most kind of strength there within the team and culture. I think Salah is a guy that will be talked about a lot as building a great culture after the season comes around. I think that's something that we have talked about with him and his ability as a head coach, from prior years, but hasn't had the quarterback to take advantage of it. So I agree with you, Judah. I think that the play here, if you're going to make one on the division, is the Jets at plus 270. I'm curious, Judah, we've talked about alt lines quite a bit here. And if you have a view on a team in the future, you're better off betting a tail event than just an over-under on a win total. So you can actually bet these you can bet them at DraftKings. Is there anyone else, Judah, that offers these alt lines?
Yeah,
DraftKings has a nice UI for it.
Yeah, FanDuel and Caesars actually usually has the best ones.
Okay.
I think FanDuel, I was telling Brad this earlier, got a little sharper this year. You can generally, or last year I was getting like 90, let's say like dollars for every win, meaning if you were like minus 110, it would be plus 180 for a win down. That's like down to plus 150 this year. So not kind of as wide a margin as in previous years, but they're still available. The thing with like the Jets, and I guess this is like kind of a good way to cross-reference, is like they're over, I'm looking at FanDuel right now, like over 11.5 wins is plus 250. It's like I'm taking the division bet there. Now, like if they're winning 12 games, I'm betting that, they're beating up on other AFC East teams and they're going to win the division. Like I think it's just better value to take the division there.
Yeah, so on DraftKings, over 11.5 is plus 285. So slightly better than to win the division. The over 13.5 is 9-1. I will say the over 13.5 is intriguing, and I almost like that one more than the division. If they win the division, they are outplaying at least one other team, I think, that is having a really good season, right? Like, what are the chances that both the Dolphins and Bills like fall apart? Like, I don't know if it falls apart. So they're outplaying a good team. Here's the other thing: they were not, they're not playing a first place schedule, so that's going to help them a little bit. But I'm looking, as you do, Judah, for those kind of tail events. So I kind of like that 9-1. Brad, if you had to kind of place a bet on a team in this division, where are you turning to?
Yeah, so just real quick on that, I was looking at the same thing with the over and 11.5 compared to just the division. I agree with everything you just said, but they actually, all 4 of these teams, and obviously it's correlated, are all top 10 in strength of schedule per Ben Brown's ELO. And yes, they don't have a first place schedule, but their second place schedule gets them a matchup with the Dallas Cowboys in week 2, because they obviously finished second in their division. So they start the year Bills, Cowboys, Patriots, Chiefs, Broncos, Eagles. What I'm thinking is new team, new quarterback, new situation. We're going to get a classic Aaron Rodgers RELAX situation. Maybe they start off 2-4, 3-3, whatever. And then maybe is the time to buy. You get a better price. Something I used to do with the Patriots about a decade in a row when they would start like 1-2 and then rattle off 11 straight wins. I think that's maybe the opportunity here with the Jets. I know it's not a bet to give right now, but I don't hate that idea. Be patient, maybe start off slow, and then they'll put things together.
I actually really like that they have the strongest opponents early in the season, because we saw this with the Bucks when Brady got there. It's going to take a few weeks. Like, I want them humming on all cylinders when the bad teams come to play and they can run off, 10 straight wins or something like that. But I think it's a really good point, especially as we're sitting here, like, allocating dollars for a potential payout in, 8 months or whatever. That is a good thing to keep in mind. Let me ask you this, Brad. What is the biggest kind of surprise outcome that you could see, and how does it happen? Like, what is it that we're not talking about? Obviously, everyone's talking about Rodgers. Everyone's talking about Josh Allen. Everyone wants to mention the Stephon Diggs thing, Tua's injury history and everything there. But what's the thing that we're not kind of paying attention to that could end up playing a really big role here, and how might we bet that angle?
I think the biggest turning point for the Jets by a mile is this offensive line. And if you get Dwayne Brown, who's 38 years old, maybe gets hurt at left tackle, you go from Rodgers playing with probably the best pass blocking tackle in football the last decade in David Bakhtiari to maybe a backup left tackle, maybe Mekhi Becton, maybe whoever. You have Elijah Vera Tucker coming off an injury. I mentioned Becton, Max Mitchell, the other guy they have is a fourth rounder last year at right tackle. I think that's the big one, is like, yes, I don't think he's washed. I think last year was injuries and all that, but is he so mobile at 40 that he can navigate a really bad offensive line? Not to the ability that we're used to associating Rodgers with. I think that is the biggest, turning point. They get some injuries there. Things don't work out well there. And he just isn't able to overcome it like we're used to seeing from him.
Yeah. So that's interesting, because I was looking, and you can see this on pff.com, by the way, with a PFF Plus subscription, where you can take a look at kind of it's really useful right now. You can take a look at the entire lineup for the team, how they've graded previously in previous seasons as well. And you can just really quickly see kind of the strength and weaknesses of these teams. And it stuck out to me as well, Brad. I was looking at the Jets, like, man, there's a lot of green everywhere, but there's a lot of question marks on the offensive line. And certainly it's very easy to turn a couple question marks into like, yeah, this is going to be a positive, and all of a sudden the offensive line looks and feels good. But we just talked about how Rodgers, and this is probably an underrated adjustment here. Rodgers, we've talked about how poor the supporting cast was last year from an offensive perspective. In Green Bay, he has had a really good offensive line for basically like his entire career, right? That offensive line has been really, really good. So it would be, now he's dealt with some injuries there, and they certainly weren't great all of last year with Bakhtiari barely playing. But that is a thing that certainly to watch out for, because if he's going to play injured, you don't want him behind a poor offensive line. So I think that's a good point. I'm going to ask you the same question, Judah, but before I do, DraftKings, which we've mentioned a couple of times on this podcast, there's some other things besides just betting on NFL futures that you can get involved in. One of them is best ball. Now, I have been doing this read, okay, but I've been doing it so effectively that I have turned Brad Spielberger into a best ball drafter. Okay, Brad, do you want to talk about your conversion journey with best ball?
Yeah, full on addicted to best ball. I think we all know the best part of fantasy football, even redraft leagues, is the draft itself. Like by week 4, you're sitting there like scouring the waiver wire so you can put Tyson Johnson in and hope he gets like a random goal line vulture touchdown. Like no one wants to do that. The beauty is simply draft a 20-man roster, mix it up, look at week 17 matchups, all these things. It's pretty straightforward. And dude, 30-second ones, it takes like an hour and you're just cruising through. I've already done 6. I've done 6 drafts and I'm just getting started.
I don't know what else I can say there, but here's what you do. You go to DraftKings, go download the DraftKings app, sign up with the promo code PFF, and then enter the $10 million in guaranteed cash prize Best Ball Millions contest. The Best Ball tournament with $10 million in total prizes, an opportunity for you to take home $1 million. And here's the deal. Use promo code PFF and you will get your first $10 entry back in DraftKings dollars, which you can then go use, place bets in other areas. Maybe you can enter another best ball tournament, and then go enjoy the draft. It's a great way also to prepare for your bigger money, redraft leagues, because you actually get real people. Most mock draft tools out there are complete garbage and just like not realistic at all. By the way, stay tuned. You never know, that may change soon. But it's a great way to get some skin in the game and kind of see and feel out those drafts. So go to DraftKings, download the app, use promo code PFF when you sign up. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER, one per customer, opt-in required with $10 entry fee. Bonus issued in $10 DK dollars. Age and eligibility restrictions apply. Void where prohibited. See DraftKings.com/promotions for details. This ends in just 5 days on the 14th of July. So go make it happen. All right. Ask Brad this question, Judah. What's the narrative? And you're really good at this, which is kind of thinking through narratives that could happen that people are not really expecting, but kind of putting these things together. What is one that we're potentially ignoring or undervaluing the possibility of this happening even ever so slightly within the AFC East?
Yeah, I think this is the Patriots related, specifically Mac Jones. In 2021, Mac Jones was the 12th rated PFF passer. He had one of the best college seasons we ever graded in 2020. What if the aberration was the play calling of Matt Patricia in 2022, excuse me, and actually not the development of Mac Jones? And we're going to see a quarterback who looks a little more like the 2021 version, or even better, let's say, than the 2021 version. And had we played out a different simulation, and the 2022 coordinator was not Matt Patricia, but someone competent, he'd actually look pretty good. Another just kind of note here, I posted this chart on Twitter about the percentage of passes that a quarterback throws to an open receiver and the accuracy of doing so. And Mac Jones is really terrific there. And if you kind of look at his 2021 versus 2022, he had way fewer options throwing to open receivers in 2022. Again, Matt Patricia was the coordinator, and he's really the guys around him are Justin Herbert, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers. He's really good in that scenario. When things are kind of laid out for him, he can take advantage of it. If we kind of just assume that the Patriots are going to be competent on offense, Mac Jones maybe progresses a little bit as a passer, this team is way, way undervalued. I'd capitalize on this with over 9.5 wins. You can get this at Caesars at plus 330. That's the best price that I found. I'm not taking again, I don't think the kind of full right tail for the team is there. I don't think Mac Jones is going to become an MVP candidate. I think the defense is, Belichick has a way of kind of getting that team into shape. But if he's a top 10 quarterback, and I don't think that's so crazy to assume, I think 9.5 wins is definitely in the picture.
Yeah, that's interesting. And this is the team that no one is talking about, right? We're talking about the three teams at the top. It feels, and the market has said this, that there is a big difference between them. And it's a really, really good point, right? That assumes, would it be crazy? Would it be out of this world for Mac Jones to outplay Tua this year? I think if you can cross that hurdle, right? And I think you can do so with a competent offense, then you can start to paint this picture. The question that I have still is, I look at that team, I think about Mac Jones, and you cited how well he graded in college. He had elite separators. How much of this was Matt Patricia penciling people into the wrong position and getting them in the wrong spot? And how much of it was the fact that the receiving core couldn't separate from a traffic cone? And you look at the receiving core currently, and I'm not sure that you're scaring any traffic cones this year either, right? Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster, Kendrick Bourne. Even if they did sign, I should mention Hunter Henry, because look, the 50th graded tight end who they spent a ton of money to sign needs to be mentioned, or else the Patriots fans are going to go back and be really, really mad about the lack of value they got from Target a few years ago. But does DeAndre Hopkins really even help that much? To me, that is, I think, the question. And so I guess, Judah, how much do you think, we saw Patrick Mahomes, we talked about this, Brad, a couple of our last 2 podcasts ago, but how much can you make up for these kind of mediocre receivers with good scheme? You certainly don't have Patrick Mahomes playing quarterback back here. You don't have Travis Kelce playing tight end. So how far can you actually take scheme when you've got these receivers? And do they need to make another move there, in your opinion, Judah, to make that happen?
Yeah. Well, I think the first example, I think of the Giants last year. Like their open rate, I don't have the exact number in front of me, was I believe top 5 getting open receivers. And like I don't think Isaiah Hodgins and Richie James, who did great out as good separators, are the barn beaters we're talking about. I think scheme does help. I think it all specifically helps in zone coverage more than man. Yeah, I think that's totally fair point though on the Patriots, and Hopkins is not going to kind of help in that way. But I think the point still stands that like they've been doing this forever. Like their 2021 receivers, I mean, Jacoby Myers is better than anyone they had, but like they're still throwing to Nelson Aguilar and Jonnu Smith. Not they're going to use their backs, they're going to use their tight ends, and I think it's a bet on creativity, as you're saying. And like there are definitely examples of kind of schemed receivers, if we'll call it that, who can kind of get open, not by their own merits necessarily, but by their offensive coordinators.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. So here's the narrative, and I would say that I'm not as proud of it as I am of yours, Judah. I think yours is a much better and more interesting kind of tail event. But the thing that is being talked about, not as much as I think it should be, is that I believe there is a legit chance that at the end of this year, we look back and we go, man, how did we not see the best defense, this dominant defense? Everyone's talking about the Jets. The Dolphins, you look on paper, you look at the sideline, and I think you can make a very strong case that there is not a lot of separation between, pun intended, between the Dolphins and the Jets defense. They've picked up Jalen Ramsey. Everyone thinks Jalen Ramsey was garbage last year. He was 3rd in PFF grade. Jalen Ramsey is not washed. Okay. Xavier Howard had a bad season last year. We talk about this enough. Sometimes I forget. I feel like I don't even need to mention it anymore, but I will mention it for those of you who are new to the podcast. Coverage is the least stable metric out there. How a player grades in coverage. Just don't expect it always to be the same. Well, how does that play into the Dolphins? 2 ways, actually. Both for Xavier Howard, who has been a great corner in the past, has had a couple of down seasons, but now is getting I think, a much improved defensive coordinator there. But also from the Jets' perspective, where we're just assuming that Sauce Gardner is going to be, transcendent at the cornerback position. Like, I would pump the brake. I love Sauce Gardner, but I'm just pumping the brakes a little bit there. And I think, if Tua stays moderately healthy, I don't think expecting him to stay totally healthy is a thing. You don't need great Tua. You need a standing up Tua. And if the Dolphins defense is, I think, what it could be, which is the best defense in the league, and you have 2 of the best separators at wide receiver in the league, like there's a path to the Dolphins being a really dominant team this year. And I think it starts actually with the defense as opposed to, with Tua on the offensive side. And I know that's heretical for me to say on this podcast, but that is the narrative that I don't think is being talked about enough.
That actually, that ties right into my favorite prop from this division. Which, look, I'll tell you right now, there are much more sack props listed now than last time we checked. I would recommend the under on about 95% of these sack props. I genuinely would. However, for some reason, he's our favorite player in the NFL this year.
Brad, hold on. Don't give that advice, because you will get people limited and they will be able to bet 25 cents. If you go out and you bet unders on props, you'll get limited way too quickly. So throw them off the centers.
Join the club on being limited on random props. But yeah, so that being said, and I'm telling you, check them out because there's some juicy unders on here. But our guy, Jalen Phillips, 90 pass rush grade last year, was 11th in pass rush win rate or pressure rate. Good in both metrics. His over 8.75 sacks is even money. It sounds like pretty high. It's not low, but I mean, look, I love Nick Bosa. He's at 15.75. TJ Watt's at 14. Like, yeah, he's 6 sacks below those guys. And like you mentioned, it ties into game script. It ties into having a good offense that's going to build leads and let you be able to tee off a bunch on opposing quarterbacks. Like I said, I like the under on almost everything I see here, but I like his over 8.75.
I go back to Jalen Phillips. Was one of for OG members of this podcast, was one of the players that we profited from most in that 2021 draft year. I want to say that we started betting his draft prop at like 35.5 or something like that. He was drafted 18th. And I remember, Chris Collinsworth. He watches tape on all the draft guys, right? Obviously, he's going to call them in the league, but he does the draft show, and he knows a thing or two about football. And I remember he came in and he does this thing similar to what like Chris Sims does, where like he doesn't read anything else. He goes in, watches it, and then comes in with his own take. And sometimes he got some crazy stuff there, but like oftentimes it's really helpful because he sees things without the kind of bullshit groupthink that's out there. And he comes in and he's talking about the edge class and he goes, you know what? I watched the tape and I thought Jalen Phillips was, could be the best edge defender in this class, like not even close. And he goes, then I understood. I looked at, some of the kind of doctors' evaluations, stuff like that. And I understand it. But if he is healthy, he's that good. And he's graded out that way. And by the way, you talk about things that are stable, like defensive line play is stable. Coverage is not. So betting on a guy to continue to play in that way, by the way, how can you increase the number of sacks that you get? If the opposing quarterback has to hold on to the ball longer, you have better coverage in the back, both because of Jalen Ramsey and the Vic Fangio. So I really like that bet quite a bit, Brad. And I think it really kind of dovetails nicely. What do you think about my Dolphins angle, Judah? Are you proud of that narrative?
I love it. You said that you were worried about yours. I like yours a lot more than I like mine. And I was about to bring up a point you just mentioned about like your defensive line is going to be improved when your coverage is better, right? When the quarterback has to throw the ball for a second longer. And just to add a couple more points there, the positions, your coverage is very unstable year over year. The thing that is most stable is the positions that your defensive coordinator puts you in, meaning that Vic Fangio's defenses will produce better coverage players because it's Vic Fangio's defense. This is something we talked about in an article last summer. And like, that's the most important part to me, that like his corners are going to be in good positions. And to your point about Xavier Howard, he's not going to be going up against number ones now, right? That's Jalen Ramsey's spot. He's going to play better as a 2. It's kind of a multiplier effect where everything gets better. I absolutely love that angle. The Jalen Phillips stuff does kind of hurt me a little bit. We can't bet awards in New York. I, drove to New Jersey to try and bet 80-1 defensive player of the year. And I like to bet these long shots with some decent change, but unfortunately I was able to get down a total of 81 cents.
And just on the Jalen, on the Jalen Phillips thing, real quick. One other, kind of tying things together again. So the interior defensive line, Christian Wilkins is a guy that has, I think, has played well. That is a well-known guy. He's another first rounder, 83 PFF grade last year. He's going to be right next to Phillips. So they're going to have to pay attention to him. And then the other thing that you mentioned, Brad, and kind of like your narrative was the question marks at offensive tackle for the Jets. But guess what? We also talked about the question marks at offensive line for the Buffalo Bills as well. So I think there's a lot of ways that this kind of all plays together. If you look at the Buffalo Bills' current starting offensive line, Spencer Brown has a 51.6 PFF pass block grade over there on the right side for the Buffalo Bills. So I think there's a lot of things here. I'm sure we'll see that number somehow move up. So if you are listening to this now, I think that is my favorite bet of the whole kind of AFC East preview. So Brad, I appreciate you. You didn't bet on the golf course, but you're making up for it here. Despite, I think you've overcome your hangover is what I'm saying.
That is more debatable, but I know. Look, I made you proud on the course. Outside of the bets and the drinking, I know I would have made you proud. So, but I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
Good. The hangover, where does it rank on like things that you try to avoid?
It's way up there. It's way up there. And my issue was I was out till like 1:30 last night, and then I had to get up at like 8:30 for the round, which is not like, that's not a short amount of time. But yeah, I was dry. The thing though, golf might be one of the best cures for it. Well, usually you drink through it. That also helps. But golf is a great hangover cure for sure.
We should also rank hangover cures, but I think two interesting things for us to
like
rank or draft. are things that you try to avoid, like in your normal life. Like you try to avoid getting pulled over, try to avoid having a hangover. I personally try as hard as I possibly can to never eat a bad meal. That's probably number one on my list. But also top hangover cures. I have got to think like getting in the ocean has got to be number one.
Ooh, great
If you
call.
get in the
Great
ocean
call.
for a hangover, you are cured.
Yeah. Yeah. You split on the beach, then you jump in the water. I think that might be the one of natural hangover cures, not like, some random elixir your great aunt told you to mix up.
Yeah, well, here's the one that I think is super overrated is the let me go eat shitty food. That's going to make me feel better. This isn't math where a negative times a negative equals a positive. Like going and eating like a bunch of greasy foods, like, oh yeah, it's going to soak up all the alcohol. Yeah, and then it's just going to make you feel like crap because you just ate garbage. I don't
Say,
get
I
that
think
one at all.
it's the equivalent of like, oh, my leg hurts, so I'll like punch my arm. It's like, you're like now you're just dealing with a different pain. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be an unpopular take, but that is not my go-to. I would say the other ones that I have employed are working out, just like sweating. Going into a sauna is another one, but like working out, I think does a slightly better job of that. Here's the one that I've seen someone overdo. I'll tell you guys a story because you might enjoy it. When I lived in New York and Brooklyn, when I was younger, used to go out quite a bit, and obviously the bars there don't close till 4, so you can do some damage. And one of my roommates had a little bit too much to drink, and the next day was just violently hungover. And so he decided he was going to drink enough water to, drown the entire Williamsburg district that we lived in, and that was going to cure him. And he gave himself water poisoning and had to go to the hospital for water poisoning. Yes, because he basically, I think this is how it works. I'm not a doctor, but basically water, if you drink too much water, you can clear out all the electrolytes. And basically like you don't have enough electrolytes to like function. And you like it was crazy. It was a Sunday night.
What did he drink?
Yeah, it was like he bought the gallons of like Crystal Geyser water or whatever.
Yeah.
Pouring them. And my buddy and I was 3 of us that lived there, and I'll never forget it. I can't remember if it was like his Broncos someone. It was a good game on Sunday night, sitting there watching it, and all of a sudden he like 911 comes up and they're like helping him out while I'm sitting there watching this.
Like sweating a bet. You're like, oh, come on, go.
Married to the game.
Yeah. You're like, hey, paramedic, I got the under. Can you hurry up here? Like,
yeah. The guy's like watching the game as he's like helping this
right. He's in the thumbs up to the boys in the living room.
Yeah. He needed more electrolytes to give a thumbs up.
Yeah. Jesus.
Yeah.
Wow.
I never heard of that. Do was Himalayan pink salt and he would have been fine, but instead he had to go to the hospital.
Exactly. Yeah.
Gatorade is the move. All right, we've sufficiently moved ourselves off of the AFC East. Is there anything else that you guys like from a betting angle on the AFC East before we close this one out? All right.
No.
Well, congratulations. We've finally gotten to our division previews. The people will be happy. Thank you so much for hanging out. We love you all. We'll be back on Wednesday. We will continue the previews. Yes, that's right. This isn't just a one-off. We will continue. We will be going. We'll stay in the AFC. It'll be a great podcast. We hope to see you then. Love y'all. Peace. Thank you, fellas. That was great.
Yeah, thank you, man.
I love that Dolphins angle. I love it.
Yeah, I like Fangio, man. I'd like these guys where it's like they were terrible as a head coach, but all the things that made them terrible as a head coach no longer apply when they're a coordinator again.
Totally. No, I'm like, I remember when I like
honestly, right?
No, 100%. But I remember like in Chicago and like he left, and all like Bears people were like, yeah, it's not gonna work. And I was like, what? They're like, no, he's a good guy. Like players like him. It's just like he's just not a head coach. Like it's just like there's an energy to it he just didn't have. But I think he's gonna be great.
I mean, he's like your Italian grandpa.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and it's just like in 2021, that's not going to work. He would have been great in 1960.
Yes, that's a great point actually, because I think all of the like older head coaches Like the only older head coach that has like that kind of energy that you need, it's like Pete Carroll, honestly.
Yeah.
All the other ones are just like
They're in
it's basically
college, I feel like. They don't work. It doesn't really work in the NFL otherwise.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah.
All right, fellas. Enjoy your evenings and holla at you later.
You too. Peace.
Thank you.